We've got some recaps because, shows are back. So we're going to talk about the new Adventure Time and the new Steven. What do you guys want to talk about first?
Steven?
Okay.
This Steven was so good.
So good.
Steven has been firing on all 12 recently.
So great.
It is an unstoppable train of quality.
Yeah, the episode we're talking about is Alone Together. Just in case.
Oh yeah, because it's the newest one. It's, I mean, like 2 minutes in, my jaw hit the floor.
Yeah,
I was like vocal. I gave like
the
a
whole
vocal
episode,
yelp.
like, I just
Yeah, no. Okay, let's talk about what that was, because it manifested in physical reactions of disbelief in all of us. And the episode starts off with Steven and the Gems dancing and like them trying to learn a dance
for this gem synchronization
for gem fusion, but we don't learn that it's for gem fusion for a while until the end of the scene. We just think they're dancing, like rehearsing something. And there's this part where Pearl and Garnet are dancing, and first it's like a very simple ballroom dance, kind of stiff, like uncharacteristically stiff for Garnet, and then Garnet does the thing where she, like, pins Pearl against the wall, and Pearl's like, ah! And then in the same motion, it's like, do you see, Steven? This is how you do it. And then it cuts to Steven, and he's just, like, as astonished as all of us were that they just did that.
Like freaking dirty dancing,
Yeah.
No one puts baby in a corner shit.
Yeah, it was super erotic. Or, like, sensual, erotic. Very evocative. It was super gay, and I loved it, and it was crazy that got in.
Yeah. But my favorite part was when Steven and Connie were dancing. Because they sort of start out doing like that middle school, I don't know how to dance thing. And it's super cute. And it's just so cute.
It's very sincere.
And then Connie... of course, we get, the big part of this episode in that Steven fuses with Connie, and they become Stevani, who's this beautiful person.
Who I think, like the Gems, transcends gender.
Yeah, I think so. Because, it did get me thinking about gender, because the Gems have said their physical bodies are just that. They're not really themselves. They just consider them shells or whatever. Yet
They're
they
rocks.
always seem to prefer, like, a feminized version. So I wonder why that is.
You know why? It's because they look better.
Because women are great.
Because women look cool and men look like dumpsters.
Okay.
Nobody has ever gotten mad at me for anything I've said on the show, and I wonder what it's gonna fucking take.
But yeah, Stevani comes to be, and Stevani is just so wonderful. And we sort of have this weird sensual scene where she's like feeling her body and like trying to figure out what she is, and there is something kind of really...
We're gonna refer to Stevani as feminine because she's more feminine than masculine, although she is rather androgynous looking. And, as a gem thing, but, keep in mind that we're not necessarily gendering her as female. We just, English is not great with, non-gender specific pronouns. We kind of got them, but they're weird.
It's a work in process.
And she goes back to the Gems, and this is my favorite Garnet ever. Garnet is just
so
happy. Like, she can't contain her smile. She can't contain her anything. She's just like, Stevani, you are not one person, and you are not two people. You are an experience. And go have fun. And it's just like, ah! And then of
course, Pearl's like, stop it. Don't do this anymore. I'm strict mom. I'm downer mom.
And I love the running cycles because I love like the blend of Steven and Connie. The actress who plays Stevani like does the Steven laugh, and I love how Stevani can go from like being really elegant to like being really silly. Like Stevani is just great.
There are times when you can hear Stevani being more Steven or more Connie.
Yeah.
Because part of this being the first time that they fuse, they haven't like completely melded the individual personalities are still there, but they've also merged. Like, this is the thing, it's kind of hard to compare to any kind of human experience because it's not a real thing.
Yeah, because at first I was like, oh, I can tell who's Connie and who's Steven. But then by the end I was like, okay, this is just a new person now.
So good.
But we actually got a question about this episode from Lydia. She wanted us to talk about it. And she had a particular question about the sexual harassment scene. And if we feel that's what that scene was. And I believe she's referring to the scene in the club.
With Kevin.
And
one of the storyboard artists on the show, Lauren Zook, who I love her entire online presence. I think she's a wonderful artist, and I think she's funny as all goddamn hell. She's Lauren Zook on Twitter and Tumblr. Please follow her. She said, she opened up her ask box, and somebody asked, who's the worst character in Steven Universe? And she said, hands down, Kevin. Kevin's a complete piece of shit.
Yeah.
And yes, I do think that was absolutely sexual harassment. This show is, it's something we talked about at the top with the news stories. This is a rather, feminine driven show. Like, obviously anybody can enjoy it, but it comes from a more feminine place than a lot of other shows that we're talking about, that we talk about on this show. And part of that's, it's a female creator and a largely female staff. And even, the dudes who are involved on it, are coming from a feminist perspective. And I think it's absolutely about, trying to teach a lesson about, like, watching out for fucking predators and scumbags like this Kevin piece of shit and learning how to deal with it.
Yeah, and, and we see her, like, recede into herself and feel really terrible that she's getting all this unwanted attention and this guy won't leave her alone because, she asks, she's like, no, and he, like, keeps following her and she tries to get away from him, and then there's this very symbolic thing where she feels like she's just trapped.
Yeah, I mean, this motherfucker doesn't take no for an answer. That's a huge part of harassment. And I mean, I'm coming from a place of male privilege. I can't say that I've ever experienced something like this. And it's something that I've come to learn that I have to acknowledge and I have to do my best to sympathize with. And I also know that it's really that the fact that I can't say anything about it is probably the most important thing I can discover for myself. Nina, is this something you'd be comfortable talking about, like any kind of thing you felt, or is that too real?
Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of part of being alive.
Dumpsters, human dumpsters.
I mean, I've been. I mean, I don't know if I have a few stories, but they're kind of tangential. But yeah, there are just some people who, like, they'll decide that they like you, and they just.
It's not even that they decide.
Alone.
It's not even that they decide that they like you, because that's not how these fucking people think. It's that they decide that they want you. They decide that you're something that belongs to them.
Yeah, well, they decide they want your attention, and they'll just do whatever. And
so yeah. What's just an accurate depiction of that kind of shit?
I think so. I mean, especially because it's sort of like at a party too, and it's really interesting because because Connie was talking about how she was embarrassed to dance in front of people, and so here's Connie as Stevani dancing and being awesome at it, and then getting all this unwanted attention from, like, the crowd of people who are just impressed. They're not, like, making fun of her, but they're just, like, aghast at how amazing Stevani is. And then this guy comes up, and, like, I think the part that I think was the most accurate, or the part that I, could identify with the most, is when she tries to leave the center of the dance floor. Like, she goes to the corner thinking it's gonna be better there, where she can kind of calm down, and he follows her over there. Which is, a very real thing.
I'm so sorry, like, on behalf, here's the thing. Like, any young men listening to this, listen to this kind of shit and make a change. This is what we have to do. All right, we have to acknowledge there's a problem. We have to start by solving it internally, and then you have to start calling out peers on this shit. This has to stop. It's 2015.
Yeah.
Eat the boomers, eat the predators.
Yes. But one scene that I really, really loved was the scene where Stevani went to the donut hole.
Oh my god, yeah, let's talk about things that are fun and just great again.
And I love how I love how God, I can't even remember their names.
Lars and Sadie.
Lars and Sadie, like, as the scene progresses, their designs and art just gets more reduced and simplified because they're just melting in awe of, like, how amazing this human person is.
Yeah, which I think it says a lot about, the fluidity and the flexibility of gender and sexuality. And as we said, Stevonnie has no... We can say Stevonnie is likely agender, asexual, or has no distinct sexual characteristics. Is truly androgynous. Sadie and Lars, who obviously we haven't seen the full depth of their sexuality, and it's not a good move to assume that they're straight, but we've only ever seen them exhibit heterosexual attraction, and they're both so enamored by this person.
Well, I think part of it is just when you see a drop-dead gorgeous human being, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're just like,
Yep.
Holy fuck, I can't even believe it. You know? It doesn't matter what you normally are attracted to. It's just like, this human is just unbelievable.
Like, you exist. Your existence single-handedly gives me hope for the future because you're walking here on this earth. Thank you.
And it's a nice callback to the... And it's a nice callback to the pilot because there was like that one line that Lars said to Steven where it's like, hey, Steven, it's not like you're a hot girl or anything. And then, Steven becomes
Well, now
a
who looks like a shithead? Lars, always.
It's always.
And I love how Sadie's just like, it's okay. She's just like, don't worry about it. Just take it. Just go.
Yeah.
Just go. Just leave. I can't stand to look at you anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that scene, in a sense, solidified what I feel was the thesis of this episode is that it was very bi-positive, pan-positive, trans-positive. It's this is modern feminism.
It was just positive. Like, watching Stevonnie run through the beach in joy and ecstasy was just really fun to watch. It just made me feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah.
That continues positivity. That continues to really be the thesis of all the new shows that have been coming out for the past few years. Positivity. Be happy. Don't be such a cynic shithead, especially if you're 10. Wow,
Yeah.
that's like...
Which is weird that I
Children.
like all of them. It's weird that... Well, one other small thing I liked about this episode is when Sour Cream is DJing, he's making chiptunes. He's got a bunch of his deck or whatever it is a bunch of Game Boys hooked together. And like they're actual Game Boys, which is really cool.
There was an advance in there.
Yeah, no, they've had like real game systems in this show. Like Steven has a GameCube.
Yeah. But like it's weird that he had a Game Boy Advance because the Advance's sound chip was shit. And so a lot of this show's soundtrack is chiptunes. A lot of it's really hybrid chiptunes. We've talked about it before. This artist who goes by Ivy and Sarashu, I think I'm getting that right, where it's a hybrid of piano and chiptunes. And it's cool for them to finally have like a visual acknowledgement of this music, which is still very much a nascent art form. A visual acknowledgement of this music that forms a huge part of this show and a lot of other shows of this era. It's a huge thing in Adventure Time. And they acknowledge it and they call it as like a real cool thing. I think that's really cool.
But yeah, this episode was just an absolute joy. Stevonnie is an amazing character.
I'd love to see more of Stevonnie.
I just love that Connie and Steven have this relationship. Like it's so cute.
It's very cute. It's very sincere. And I like how it's not even explicitly romantic. There are pangs of that, but it's also very platonic. It's the two of them in simple ways helping the other to be a more complete person.
Yeah, because they're kids and they don't have a full understanding of romance. Like even if that's like that can't be what's going on because they're not romantic people.
Yeah, they just like each other. They just find each other fun to hang out with and be around. And I like it because this lets Connie kind of be part of the group, because she always would say like, oh, I could never do that, and I'm not special, and I could never save the world. But it's like, now you can. Now you can be this amazing superpowered lady.
And actually, we've talked about this a lot, but there's a lot to unpack in these 11 freaking minutes.
I know.
It's interesting to see. I saw somebody say that this episode was in many ways about sex without actually being about sex.
I can buy that.
As we've established, the gems are not sexual creatures. We have no idea how they reproduce, but it's not sexual. I mean, we have no indication that it is.
They buy those second grade science crystal kits.
Presumably it was with Greg and Rose Quartz, though.
Yeah, but that's like a hybrid thing. What we do see about Gem Fusion is that it's this very, very intimate thing, and a lot of the imagery that has accompanied it has been not super explicitly but sexually charged. In the episode with Sugalite, when Garnet and Amethyst do their dance, Pearl covers Steven's eyes because it's a very
suggestive dance.
It's a very suggestive thing. It's a very, very passionate thing that's happening. I'm not going to say that this is their analog to sex, but I think there's definitely comparisons to be made. And also the thing that Garnet was saying about you are not one person, you are not two people, you are an experience. I think that you can absolutely draw that as a comparison to sex and sexual relationships and deep romantic relationships. And also a super smart way of handling it metaphorically that didn't broach the subject, but still completely and sincerely talked about the subject. It is a smart as hell show. Next show is Pearl and Garnet and have her voiced by Janelle Monáe. Is there any other option?
All right, so I think it's about time we move on.
I think we're good.
We talked more about this than Cagliostro.
Yeah, there's more to unpack. Let's talk about Adventure Time, which is also a pretty heavy episode, but one that I haven't had as much time to sit on.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Evergreen, and it is the first episode to take place entirely, well, except for the final, 60 seconds, entirely before the Mushroom War. And I thought that meant, pre-Mushroom War, soon before the bomb dropped. Turns out, no, way, way before. We're talking probably pre-human history.
Yeah.
Probably?
There weren't any. There was a dinosaur.
Yeah, we're almost certainly talking about like what we would consider prehistoric. This episode focused on a character named Gunther, who was a anthropomorphized lizard person, voiced by, I looked up her name,
Pamela Adlon.
Pamela Adlon, most famous for voicing Bobby Hill in King of the Hill and Ashley Spinelli in Recess.
Yeah, I recognize the voice.
This voice is super cute.
It's a very cute voice. Gunther also had a pet creature that looked a lot like Jake, named Nina.
I don't get that a lot in my life, so it's always fun when a character pops up.
The last time was, what, Camp Lazlo?
Yeah, I think so. I don't even remember who that was.
It was a giraffe.
Oh, yeah!
The giraffe! I like Camp Lazlo.
I like Camp Lazlo, too.
That goes on the pile. And so does the rest, and so does more of the Lupin franchise. I think it'll be an interesting comparison. What is happening in this episode is a comet is coming towards Earth, a comet with visual elements of it that deliberately evoke the Lich. And there's a meeting of 4 elemental masters. Evergreen, what was his first name? Urgence Evergreen, who looks a lot like the Ice King and has the Master over Ice, also voiced by Tom Kenny. And then we got the Master of Fire, still voiced by Keith David. Master of Candy, voiced by Alan Tudyk,
Chat Sperry is the character.
Chat Sperry, who most relevantly was the voice of the Candy King in Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh, wow.
He's been in the last 3 Disney movies. He was in Big Hero 6. I think he was the red herring villain.
Oh.
And he was, I forget who. No, he was the Duke of Wesselton in Frozen.
And then the slime elemental.
Yeah, voiced by storyboard artist Steve Wolfhard, who was the Slimy Dee's his name. He's voiced by Steve Wolfhard, who is, I think, most notably, he created Jake's Kids.
Aww.
He designed those characters.
Aww, so cute.
He's a great storyboard artist, and he said that this is the first and last time he has voice acted. I guess it was tough for him.
Aww. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It was a good goof.
It was a great goof.
This episode really confused me timeline-wise.
Yeah.
A lot.
Let me finish the synopsis first. So, Evergreen proposes this solution that he creates a magical crown that will grant the user one wish. And the other 3 oppose the idea because wish magic is apparently really dangerous because it can backfire. So he says, fuck all y'all. He freezes them, and he goes on a little quest to get the materials he needs, which are these 3 ruby eyes from some magma beast in the Fire Kingdom.
Looks like tree trunks.
But like I said, it's mostly told from the perspective of his apprentice, who this whole time like really wants to learn magic from Evergreen, but Evergreen doesn't really care about him. To him, he's a pack mule or whatever.
Yeah.
And he gets the jewels from the monster, and he fuses them to this crown to make the Ice King's crown. But the monster comes in, destroys the lab, and the only person who can wear the crown to stop the comet is Gunther. And when he puts it on, the wish that he asks for is not to stop the comet, but to be like Evergreen, which results in this sort of outburst of self-deprecation where he's just chanting over and over again, Gunther, no, Gunther, no, because that's all Evergreen ever said to him.
Yeah.
And then it's implied that this iteration of the world is destroyed by the comet. And then we cut to the Ice King in the present day of Ooh, jumping up and down on his bed saying, Gunther, no, Gunther, no. And then he snaps out of it. And, like, the Gunthers are in the corner cowering. And he's like, you ever have those dreams where you're the lizard guy and everything? So what that was a memory of his that was imbued in the crown. So, yeah, very interesting episode. A lot of world building, which they backed off from. They were doing a lot, like, late last year. They backed off from for a bit, and now they're going back to it. Which I always like.
Yeah,
so let's talk about some of the stuff that the questions this raises.
Well, first of all, look at this, you guys.
You posted a thing?
All right. So the reason why I brought it up is because of that last panel, which implies something very different than what we've understood about the history of the world of Ooh. Previously,
what we're looking at is the piece of promotional art that the storyboard artists always do before an episode shows that. It's a little 6-panel comic of Evergreen and Gunther, but the 6th panel that we're talking about is the comet hitting the Earth, making a huge explosion.
And it's hitting the Earth in the exact place where the giant hole in the Earth is.
Because it's always drawn from the same angle.
Yeah. And previously, the theory was that the giant hole in the Earth was caused by the big, giant mushroom bomb that released the Lich into the world.
Which we saw in the Season 5 premiere, Jake the Human. That's not it. Finn the Human, Jake the Dog.
But this seems to be implying that the comet made the big hole, and then at the end of this episode, we saw a comet coming towards the planet again, because apparently the comet comes every 1,000 years or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing that they said in that council meeting.
So, I mean, I think it's fair enough to say at this point that this is not just a post-apocalyptic Earth as we know it, but a completely different thing entirely.
Well, it's hard to see where that intersects because we've seen in a lot of episodes ruins of what seems to be a human Earth.
Yeah, that's why this episode's very confusing to me, because it kind of changes the whole timeline.
Yeah.
And like, if you think about it, it's every 1,000 years. Human history is what, like 6,000 years old? Is at least human civilization?
Or 4,000, I think. Something like that. I don't know.
I don't know how far back like Mesopotamia goes, but like, civilization as we know it has been around for several thousand years. So the idea that it's our Earth, it's post our Earth is kind of out the window now because there's no room for that kind of development to be made unless they've managed to stop the comet other times, and then in the Mushroom War, they didn't. As we
Maybe the comet hits the Earth in the same place every time, and the hole gets bigger?
That's possible. And this comic is not strictly speaking canon.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not confirmed canon. Although, here's the thing. The promotional art usually is. It usually does build upon it. Say, for example, one of my favorite ones is Son of Mars. The promotional art is Magic Man reaching down into like a canyon after somebody who fell in, and it's like, oh, that's his girlfriend who, after she died, his brain broke. And like that was the whole thing with Magic Man that was established in that episode.
Yeah.
That was expanded upon in this single drawing of promotional art that one of the storyboard artists did. So I do think that this is something to consider. Because, I mean, this was officially released on the Frederator blog. It's possible that the comet has been stopped several times, and, like, in the Mushroom War, it wasn't. Because we saw in the alternate Farm World that it was stopped. That the bomb. Well, here's the other thing, like, is it a comet or a bomb? Because it's been in that episode, it was shown as the bomb was stopped by the Ice King, was stopped by Simon
Well,
Petrikov.
no, I'm saying that there are different things now.
Like it
That's what I think they're because the comet is this separate thing, and then there's the Mushroom War.
We gotta see how this plays out. This raises more questions than it answers, really.
Jumbles everything up.
Now, one piece of canon that this does call back to, I think the wiki said in season 1, "What have you done?" This is the second week in a row we've talked about this episode. That Ice King mentioned that he didn't steal the crown, but he made it out of stolen materials, which Evergreen did do. So it's possible he's internalized those memories into his own, although obviously very corrupted because he's the Ice King. It's a very odd episode. I don't expect us to see any kind of follow-up on this stuff for a while.
Well, I was just gonna say that like anything relating to season 1, like early seasons, would be like a retcon because obviously they didn't have the entire history of Ooh planned out from the very first season, and they said as much in like the first season, like commentary and stuff. I just hope that everything they're coming up with for this fits well into what they've already established, you know? Because obviously this wasn't like this show isn't some giant grand design from episode 1, you know? They obviously they do come up with stuff.
Yeah,
they're not
they
just rolling
build
with it,
upon
but
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, I do like how they seem to be aware, because it doesn't contradict season 1. It expounds upon it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it maybe retcons their intentions, but it doesn't disregard any canon, which I like.
Oh no, I'm not
That's
saying
the
it's a
smartest way
bad
to do
thing.
it.
I'm just saying like I don't want people to think that like, oh man, like Penn Ward penned this giant opus and then pitched it to Cartoon Network. Like, nah, son. Actually, at this point, like this might not even be Penn Ward's idea.
He's still a writer for the show.
Yeah,
He's
but
not
this
showrunner.
episode was written by Tom Hairpitch.
Herpick and Steve Wolfhard.
Herpick.
Yeah. But now that he's in the lower rungs of his own show, like he doesn't necessarily have to oversee everything.
He's still one of the head writers, but whatever. So that's recaps and basically our show. Next week we are talking about Revolutionary Girl Utna. That episode will be recorded during MagFest, so
somehow.
Yeah, the logistics of that are going to have to be figured out. But that means that we're going to have 2 special guests on there. Tuchin, what's the proper pronouns? Fuck it. Our friends Vespa and Jake, who are colleagues of ours from Cooperation Laboratory, the voice acting troupe that we're in,
Have they watched the show?
They're working on it, same as me. We'll be sitting in and peanut gallerying it up. It's going to be a lot of people on one track, and it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, because the show is a nightmare to discuss critically.
We'll probably like prompt them when to speak.
Well, Hulu only has the dub, which Tooch and Nina say isn't very good. You can find the sub on YouTube from what seems to be a legitimate thing. I'm not sure.
No, it is a legitimate thing.
It is legitimate.
It's the current distributor.
The current distributor released the sub and dub.
Yeah, on YouTube.
And I guess we're going to be talking about the sub. Like we said at the top of the show, we're going to be at MagFest. If you're going to be at MagFest, come and see us. It's going to be Saturday. The meetup's going to be Saturday at 2 p.m. on the ballroom floor near the concert halls. There's this area that at least last year had tables and shit. And it's going to be there because it's easy we can sit down. That's what's important. And we won't be in anybody's goddamn way, which is even more important, I think. So, hope to see you there. We'll hang out for a bit. And then we'll see you at the Rebecca Sugar thing. Shout-outs, Nina?
At 5 Moon says, listening to the Toon Goons doing their Fooly Cooly show, why does it make me so happy that Nicky the Rat reads Saga?
I don't know, man. It's pretty good comic. Like, I recommend that, and I hope they make a cartoon out of that someday.
Lydia wrote a very long, not very long, but a nice email, so thank you for that. Logan just wrote an email, like, today, or yesterday. Thank you. that person said that my theory about Steven Universe is quite sound. And you know what? I appreciate that, Logan. I agree with you.
Which
Thanks.
theory?
My theory about the Crystal Gem Society.
Oh, the Saiyan thing, yeah.
Yeah, same thing. I think that's about it. I mean, every week we get new followers, new subscribers, lots of new fans. We appreciate everybody's support a lot.
Here are the ways to contact us if you want to, compliment us, that's sure, but we also take, any kind of critique on how we can make the show better, suggestions for shows to cover, any kind of questions that you have, like if you want us to follow up on a point that we made in the show. We'd love talking about that kind of thing. News stories, if you see anything interesting that you want to make sure that we talk about at the top of the show during our news segment, those are always appreciated. If it's something long form, the best way to contact us is through email. Our address is thetoongoons@gmail.com. You can also find us on Tumblr, thetoongoons.tumblr.com. On Twitter, we're at the Toon Goons. You can find our episodes on SoundCloud /The Toon Goons or on iTunes. Search for the Toon Goons. All of this stuff has an integral article, so keep that in mind. We upload our episodes in segments and as well as outtakes on YouTube, which is the Toon Goons podcast.
Yes.
I think that's everything. All right, so that's the show. Thank you for tuning in. I've realized I've stopped saying that like as a self-deprecating goof. It's just now it's just a thing. This is how irony works. It never lasts forever, and you just eventually just do it for real. I've been Nikki.
I've been Nina.
And I actually was Lupin the Third once for Halloween, and it was kind of goofy because I looked dumb with mutton chops.
And I just realized that this is where I'm supposed to say, thank you for tuning in.
Yay.
Bye, everybody.